Welcome to the GCN Tech Clinic, where you are able to submit your tech-related questions using the comments section below and highlight your questions using the hashtag AskGCNTech, and then we'll do our best to get round to them and answer them for you in this very show. So without further ado, Alex, this week's first question.
First up this week, we've got a question from John Lee, who says, don't mind me asking, what is a superbike? When I was racing, there was no such thing as a superbike, just good, hard racers.
Yeah.
Well, a superbike is kind of very much something you decide yourself. Some person might consider a bike a superbike, someone else might not. In my mind, I think it's a bike that represents the latest technology and is a particularly high price point, making it stand out for a number of reasons.
Yes, so something that would probably have one of the highest tier group sets on. It would be, and especially, yes, lightweight or especially aero frame, and something that was quite sought after. In the same way that you have the term a supercar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess is where it's taken from, really, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah, right, next question in is from Nicholas Remillard.
I think it's Remiard.
Remiard?
Okay. Who says, hi folks, how often should we maintain our tubeless tyres? How do we know if the sealant has dried within the tyre? If the sealant has dried, can we simply add more sealant? Or is it best to clean out the tyre before refreshing the sealant?
Shall I answer this?
Go for it.
Yeah, well, it's going to vary loads depending on where you live in the world, so to do with the climate. If you live in hotter or drier climates, then the sealant is going to dry out much quicker.
And so depending on the sealant you use too.
Yeah, and it also varies on the sealant and the type that is used. You've got latex-based ones, and there's also, I think it's glycerol-based ones, isn't it, that don't dry out quite so fast. But the easiest method I find to check if the sealant inside is okay is just simply to pop one of the tyre beads off, use a tyre lever, and have a look inside the tyre. There's no better way of checking them there.
Well, the other way you can check if the sealant is still liquid is if you get like a dipstick, and some sealants come with this. You take out your valve core, make sure you deflate the tyre first, and then you dip the dipstick in with the valve core at the bottom position so that the sealant's run down. And if it comes out wet, then you've still got wet sealant in there. But once your sealant has clogged up and dried up, best thing to do is probably take the tyre off.
Yeah.
And
just scrape it out, clean it out, wipe it all off, and then when you fit your new sealant or install a new sealant, it's got the best chance of working as good as possible. I learned something new there. I didn't know your method. Thanks very much. Next question here is from SLSA5. They say, my Freehub sound has magically disappeared at around the 2,000 kilometre marker. I've tried servicing the hub, but it's still silent. What's the cause? Should I be concerned? Can I bring the sound back? Thanks, y'all.
Well, it's hard to diagnose a problem like this without actually seeing the bike, but the first thing I would check is if your Freehub is dragging.
Yeah.
So if you turn your cranks with the bike in the stand, and then after and the wheel starts spinning, after you take your hand off the crank, if the inertia of the wheel causes the cranks to carry on turning, then that's the Freehub dragging, and that suggests that your Freehub has an issue and requires some maintenance.
Yeah, it can be all gunked up with old grit and grime, and they do say they've serviced it. So presumably if they've serviced it, they would have noticed if any parts were not quite sat right. It could be that one of the pulls is not engaged correctly, because that's what makes the noise. Or it could just be where they've serviced it and installed fresh grease, it's sort of quietening the noise down.
Yeah.
So they might find after a few weeks it might return.
Because Freehubs sometimes get a lot noisier when they're dry out and in desperate need of grease and lubrication. So it could be what's happened there. You've actually just restored it to how it should be.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Next question in is from Eric Olson, who says, I've built a second set of road wheels for my gravel bike. I've bedded in the brake pads on the gravel rims. Do I need to bed the brake pads in on the new rims, which have new rotors? Disc brake. I thought it was talking about rim brakes for a second then. Yeah, it's always best to bed in all of the different components that you're going to use for your brakes. So that includes the rotors on the first set of wheels and the second set of wheels, whilst the brake pads would already be bedded in. You just need to use them for a couple of rides and try to avoid any prolonged harsh braking, and it should be good to go.
I agree. Next question is from Skyscraper, who says, in big capital letters, tech question.
Okay.
Shouting.
Yeah.
You need to shout. He says he's got a bike from 2010 with Ultegra 6700 on it, and when he got it, it didn't have many miles on it. but it never shifted very well. And he said he often has to give it another half shift to nudge the chain to the next gear. What do you think that is?
Well, it sounds to me like it just needs to add a little bit of tension to the cable to get the indexing spot on. It sounds like it's having to just overshift very slightly, which is an indicator that you can add a bit of tension. You can just use the barrel adjuster to do that, or it could be that maybe the gear cables need replacing or lubricating. So you could, I'd first add a little bit of tension to the cable to try and index the gears correctly. Then I would try lubricating the cables, and if you're still struggling, I think you might have to replace the gear cables and set it all up correctly.
Yeah, but replacing gear cables is pretty inexpensive to do in the grand scheme of things, and is a thing that's worth doing if you've had the bike since 2010. The other thing that is often the most likely cause of sort of dodgy shifting, where you know it's just half a shift out, can be a bent mech hanger as a really common cause. And if it's a used bike or it's from 2010, there's a good chance that that mech hanger could be a little bit bent. So you can straighten them out. Your local bike shop can do that for you if you don't have a mech straightening tool. But the best thing to do is to just buy a replacement hanger, as we always say anyway. And it's always good to just have a spare replacement hanger all the time anyway.
And as you said to me a few weeks ago in the tech show, it's like buttered bread, isn't it? It always falls hanger side down.
Bikes do. It's just one of those enduring mysteries.
Yeah. Next question is from Dorian Lever, who says, "Hey y'all, I want to make my ride a bit more comfortable and was looking at purchasing a new carbon seat post. I want to know, should I purchase one with 0 or 25mm offset? Are there any disadvantages to having more offset? Moreover, if I do not know the exact length I need, should I err on the side of caution so I get it longer and then just could be cut down?"
Wow, there's a whole potential can of worms being opened here.
Yes.
Y'all. But I would suggest, if you're unsure about whether you should be running offset or not, it might be worth getting a bike fit. You know, something like the Seller Italia ID match would be incredibly useful to you here. And then you can apply the measurements you get from that back onto whatever bike frame you want, and it will recommend whether or not you want layback or not. Now, in general terms, if you wanted to sit more forward on the bike in a more aggressive position with a more open hip angle, kind of a bit like a TT bike position, you want less layback. If you want a better bike position that's more traditional geometry or better for sort of weight distribution over the back wheel and bike handling, then you tend to have more layback. So that's the way.
Yeah, I was thinking that if you have a bit of layback on the seat post, well, firstly, you could try to mimic your current position on your bike. And if you have a little bit more layback on the seat post, it's going to make it a little bit more inclined to flex a little bit more. And that's what's going to give you that feeling of comfort. Although, if I'm honest, I feel like the difference of changing the seat post isn't going to be much of a sort of game changer to the feeling of your bike, but it will make a slight difference.
Yeah, worth looking into.
Yeah.
Last question this week is from Chris Huang, who says, "Hi Manon and lads, I'm riding Burn. I'm riding a Cannondale CAD 3 R500. They're nice bikes, those. I think that's one of the old made in the US of A ones.
US of A.
And considering he's modding the drivetrain to 1x, putting on a 56 tooth chainring and a 2311 cassette, would it compromise the integrity of the frame, considering that it's a pretty old frame made of aluminium? Thank you so much. Love the show." First off, who is this guy? Like Miguel Indurain? Like, is he like Filippo Ganno? 56, 23, easiest gear.
It's a confident choice of gear ratios.
Wow. Do you just live only where there's downhill?
I mean, I might move there.
Wow, I want to know where you live. Yeah.
I don't think there's any way it's going to compromise the integrity of the frame. You're not putting any
It might compromise the integrity of your
legs.
knees.
Yeah, you're not putting any additional stress or components or forces through the bike. Although something that jumps out to me is what you've said. The gear ratio is particularly tough, so you might want to maybe consider a slightly wider range cassette.
Yeah, 56, 23. Wow.
Wowzers. Basically, I think your frame is going to be perfectly fine. Don't stress, and that gear ratio will work correctly. Should you have the strength and the
just please
ability.
upload it to the upgrade section of the tech show in the GCN app so that we can see the Cannondale CAD 3 with 5611 on it. I want to see that.
Yeah.
1x.
Right, that's it for this week's GCN Tech Link. I hope that's been helpful and answered as many of your questions as we could get to. Sorry if we haven't got to your question, but do keep submitting it in the comments section down below, and hopefully we'll get to it in the coming weeks, won't we?
Right, see you there.